Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me? Thank you, Michael, for these kind words and more than generous description. And I did not know that you had reached out to some of my collaborators and students. So it's a delight to know that you did that and to see what I couldn't read the whole thing, but I get the gist of it. I get the gist of it. So it's a real pleasure to be here and to be the speaker tonight. I have CTO, or should I say OSIS, for just to date myself, in the blood. That was the first real division I joined in the academy, and I have played around with other divisions, but I've always remained faithful to this division. Having different interests leads to trying to fit in other divisions, and the fit is never as the same. This is my home division, and as I look around the room and I see all of you, you know what I mean. This is a place where we are all comfortable, we're all together, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Of course, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try to say it in the, was it 30 minutes, Michael, you gave me? So I may speak a bit faster than I usually do, but there are things I want to say. So first of all, I've been PhD program director for 9 years. I've been a professor for 25, and I've been PhD program director for 9 years. I do enjoy that part of the job quite a bit. I'm told I'm good at it, and I do believe I'm actually, it's a good thing for me. And I do want to waste some time, if I may call it that way, but it's never a waste, to talk to the junior scholars at the beginning of their journeys, because what's important is what can be learned from my experience. And I will start with the reason I'm in a PhD, I did a PhD and became a professor is because of this man. Many of you know him as Dr. Decade, but I was a happy consultant traveling the world, doing basically energy consulting for USAID, the World Bank, and helping governments set up renewable energy programs before it was kind of the cool thing to do. And at some moment, I got tired of traveling so much, and I got tired of some of the corruption I saw happening around these projects, and I decided to take a job within the US, and I took a job at an energy conservation firm where all I heard was about this amazing fellow who had just left to go get his PhD. And all I can say is that I was a poor copy of this fellow. He was an amazing programmer, and I was not. I did not know they needed programmers. They hired me to be a manager of in the energy field, and turned out they needed programmers. So I ended up trying to duplicate what the skill set that Brian has. And of course, as you know, it's a very hard thing to do. So I failed miserably. And to get out of that bind, I looked around and found a PhD program and jumped in there. I was surprised that they supported you with money to do your PhD. That was something completely alien to me. I did not have much experience with it, but Brian, if you're watching, this is because of you. So my journey was a difficult one, I want to admit. A recent study found out that if your parents don't have a PhD, or one of your parents doesn't have a PhD, the odds of making it to the through the PhD is 24 times higher if you have a parent that's a PhD. So the habitus of the family matters a lot. So my parents did not have PhDs, so I was already at a disadvantage. I had worked for a number of years. I had what they call in the business an attitude problem. I was unwilling to be infantilized, and I saw some professors who couldn't organize their way out of a paper bag, and I had run projects worth millions of dollars and talked to ministers and amazing organizations, and suddenly I was back to this childlike position. And you know that a PhD program to work well, I guess we're told it's like the army, we have to break you down before we rebuild you. And that is difficult for people who are actually experienced. So I was told I couldn't write, even though people had admired my writing. I had been a part-time journalist, and all that good stuff, it went out the window. All my competencies were not valued. And at the same time, I struggled with the concepts that were prevalent in the field. So many people were excited about self-efficacy, all these social psychological concepts, the technology acceptance problem, the stage model of IT development was still kicking around. One professor told me that the future was options pricing applied to technology, and that's all I should do. So it didn't go very well that way. So till I met my mentor and supervisor, Lee Sproul. And Lee was this amazing person, a real social scientist, while before I had met people who just pretended to be of the same caliber. This was off the charts. You may know Lee Sproul as somebody who has worked with Sarah Kiesler, and they have produced an amazing stream of work on computer-supported communication. They were the real deal, and I want to admit, I want to recognize, not admit, recognize publicly that the experience of working with Lee Sproul is the one that was transformative. I learned how to write. I learned how to think. I learned how to set up an argument, all these things that are really important in academic writing. And my first paper was with her. It's a paper on, it's a very small paper, my first conference paper, literally. So it's in the 90s, and right around the time the browser was being invented, and actually it predates the browser, and by a few months. And it was about basically, what do people do when they go online? And the expectation, the dominant theme, and that's all you could hear, was that people were looking for basically more channels, like on, if cable TV gave you 30 channels, well, the information superhighway was going to give you 500, you'll have more choices and you'll consume more information. And in this, I dare call it a gem of a paper. We put out this idea that actually, no, the net was a social technology. People were looking for a community. People were looking for affiliation, support, belonging, affirmation, and that's what the net was going to provide. And so it went countercurrent. It got this paper got republished in a couple books, and it got me thinking about basically maybe one should go big rather than go small and just add another variable to an existing model. When it came time for my dissertation, the advice Lee gave me was what her supervisor, James Marsh, had given her, which is find a topic that is where existing theory doesn't explain it well, get angry about it, get angry enough to make it your business to find out why, and call it your thesis. And I think that's really an important piece of advice from James Marsh. So for me, when I worked in that consulting firm where Brian used to be, a lot of coordination was happening. I had a manager looking over my shoulder. We had many meetings. We had kind of lots of follow-ups and so on, and schedules. But the problem with software development, if you know a bit about software, is actually you need to exchange with people. You need to get help. You need to basically exchange knowledge. And I may have an answer for you, while it would take you weeks to figure it out. Well, it's something I would have known or experienced and run into before. So exchanging knowledge is really crucial. So I went against the existing mainstream in terms of coordination theory, where it was all about structure. Coordination was a big part of structure. It's all about task interdependence that's predefined ahead of time. And very much you go through administrative coordination means to get the job done, to get things coordinated. Instead, and again, based on that experience I had, I said, no, it's about sharing of expertise, sharing of knowledge, access of knowledge when you need it. And that went against a lot of the opinions of the professors I was around. I still remember having a hard time with these ideas. I was not selected to go to the ISIS consortium. Still a sore point for me, even though I have mentored that consortium many times. And the lesson is that you sometimes new ideas, it takes a while for them to gel and to get through. And when I went on the job market, instead of having difficulty finding a job, I actually did quite well. By my 7th interview, I was sitting on 6 offers, and I had to stop interviewing, and I had to pick one and take a job. My paper out of the dissertation went to management science and was accepted with minor revisions immediately. It has never happened again. I'm sorry to say, even though I think my writing has gotten a bit better, but it shows you the importance of the ideas you're pushing forward. So I would be amiss not to talk to you about embodiment, but really is talking about my wife, Lisa. She is an amazing person who has been transformative for us. We have been married 28 years. And the air conditioner in the picture is really important to the story because it allowed me to understand embodiment. I used to live in a 3rd floor under the eaves apartment in Cambridge, and the summers in Boston were very hot, and I couldn't write my thesis. And one day an air conditioner appeared in the living room on the floor, and Lisa had carried it from, Lisa was a small person, had carried this gigantic air conditioner up 3 floors and left it there for me. And after that, my writing improved tremendously given that my body was finally comfortable. And then she did something else. She started taking me to Maine, and this is a picture from our house in Maine. This is a view that from the window, and I was able through long walks and looking at the sky to have slightly bigger thoughts than I would have elsewhere in some cubicle. So it leads to embodiment, but also I want to recognize the importance of Lisa as this amazing person in my life. And this is a picture of her on the beach with our youngest child. So lessons about this path. So this is me doing field work in a trauma center, trying to look very technologically savvy here, but it's the white coat is, I was very proud of that. That was, it made me feel very special being there among these people. And often I was mistaken for a doctor and asked to help intubate patients and things like that, but I did not take up that opportunity. I took a job at Maryland, and I was hired by Fred Davis, who you may know as the father of TAMP. And then the same year, the other person hired was Venki Venkatesh, who you may know as possibly as the most highly cited IS scholar, and who has done more TAMP papers than I have hair or something like that. So it was difficult to figure out which way to proceed, but again, I went, so the heuristic I recommend and the heuristic I applied was, and I still apply it today, see where the crowd is running and go the other way. It has served me well, and I think it serves people well. So 3 major themes I focused on. Basically, what's happening online, what are the motivation? Everybody was looking at motivations, taking psychological theories and not able to, or economic theories, and not able to explain why people were helping strangers online. All I did was run in the direction of socialized explanations. For coordination, again, went away from the structural aspects and looked more at the emergent participative part and the sharing of knowledge. And when an opportunity to work in healthcare came up, I embraced it, even though I heard from some senior colleagues that it wasn't really an IS topic. I kept going to that setting, and I have had no regrets since. So the lesson is basically, if you take these traditional explanations that are based on individual theories like utility maximization, motivation, and you expand them by looking at more socialized explanation, you can make a very good career out of it. And that's basically all I've done since. So I also ran into a bunch of other strange people along the way. They inhabit this division. This is just people who I met in the first couple of years of joining the division. And I tried to find pictures of them early on, but Google now gets rid of old pictures and only keeps the latest pictures. So, but just a couple of words about a couple of them. Vanda and Joanne participated in a seminar, in a 2-year running seminar on online communities run by Lee Sproul. And I was part of that, and I got to know them real well and how they think. Pamela Hines was, again, we were, I guess, what do you call that, cousins? We were, you know, her advisor was Sarah Kiesler, my advisor was Lee Sproul, and they were very close, so we got to know each other. Kevin Krausen, I've had lots of conversation about coordination with. Young Jin, who we have been friends ever since I came to that job interview at Maryland, and I went to one airport and he went to pick me up at another. So we have had been friends since. All the other, I'll single out Molly Wasco on the second row. She was my first PhD student, and it was a few months after arriving. My first course at Maryland was teaching a PhD course. And she, at the end of that, decided to move and work with me. And she left supervision. Her supervisor was the editor-in-chief of AMR, a big strategy name. And she chose to move to work together. And we have done some amazing things. And Molly, thank you for the trust and the willingness to take that risk. It's not something I would advise every day, right? Some of the others, you know, Linda Argoti has been, also took a chance on me. When she was editor-in-chief at Org Science, and I was still an assistant professor, she brought me on the board, which was highly irregular, and made me a senior editor after that. And Mai Shak, who you all know, was an amazingly supportive person throughout my career, and we worked together. Of course, there's Paul Carlyle, who you know, and there's this fellow named Michael Barrett, who I call my European connection, but has been kind of it's almost like a mind melt when we work together. And Marlene, who I see over there, Marlene has been. It's really embarrassing. Marlene and I go a long way. And yes, 2 days ago, we were on a PDW, and basically everything she says, I feel like she has stolen my thunder. And when I speak, I feel she has it's like we say the same things all the time. It's actually pretty boring when you hear us. We're very much in sync. There are many others, but these are the people I met at first. There are many newer ones, newer friends, newer colleagues, newer students, but this is kind of where we started. So I thought I'd picked a smart title with Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And I realized that I've been affected by my college-age children. They forced me to go see this movie with that title, and I went against my best interest, and I loved it. It's a great movie about basically relationships, people. It's an independent movie. That's the highest grossing independent movie ever. And I see some of the younger folks in the room recognizing that movie. And and I would recommend you all go see it. The title is what is the best part for me, because it's about these relationships that start building between people from different universes, where the multiverse, and it leads to, you know, different understandings and changes. So for us, we're living in an era where everything is in question, everywhere, all at once. A lot is changing. And I don't mean the run-of-the-mill, you know, first sentence of many papers where all firms are now operating in a ever more uncertain environment, you know, like the way people write these things. This is qualitatively different, and I feel it's important to recognize that. So Zuboff has called it surveillance capitalism. Others have called it techno-feudalism. You know what I'm talking about. This is, we have become, it's a 1492 moment in a sense that this brand new continent was discovered and was described as open for exploitation. And is very much the new continent is here, and it's you. It's basically us, all of us. Our inner thoughts, our inner communications, our private interactions are all now resources for someone to make money out of it. So it's a unique moment in human history, and it's affecting all of us. So I'll just pinpoint a couple things just from the news these days. The Uber file came out. Uber files were exposed just a couple months ago. Some of the people who are supposed to protect consumers and protect existing industries turned out to be champions of letting Uber come in and destroy and take what they needed from the transportation industry. President Emmanuel Macron turned out to be a chief cheerleader for them and made sure that in France they could operate quite freely. In return, Uber provided a bit of help when he needed to be elected. So you know how these things go. One hand washes the other. We have some academics, I'm sorry to say, some of our economist friends who saw an opportunity, rushed to help Uber and basically told Uber, we will write you a paper if you give us 100,000 euros, and you can use the results of our paper any which way you want. This paper was not published, but the press was full of references to that paper. And these professors are actually fairly established professors. One is at HEC Paris, one is at MIT. We have, the Facebook moments keep adding up. Yeah, we theorize about creative destruction, but is that what is going on? The question is, what is it replacing? What is being put in place? So we have teens that are losing their self-image because of some Facebook policies. Hate and mistrust is rising because of the way the algorithms work. The fake news being promoted ever stronger. And we have things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where basically without these techniques, Brexit wouldn't have happened, and probably the election of Trump wouldn't have happened. So there are suits now against Facebook. This is the DC Attorney General is suing Facebook over this, but it's a bit late, and it's unlikely to lead to much. Still, we are all fully engaged with when AI leads to discrimination outcomes. The algorithm, we blame the algorithm for discrimination, and we like to talk about it and teach about it. But this is garden variety discrimination. Basically, homeowners or apartment owners, these companies who rent they put ads, and basically by using Facebook's algorithm quite naturally, quite easily, we're able to discriminate based on whether you're a parent or not. They didn't like parents, whether you were you were foreign born, whether you were a non-Christian, whether you were of a certain culture, whether you came from a certain neighborhood, whether you were disabled. So it's amazingly precise information that Facebook has for us, and these people used it and deployed it. And it's only now that there's a slap on the wrist that has happened to Facebook. This is quite recent. Finally, this is probably my favorite, because I studied open source and I've been involved in that for a while. And Microsoft, when they bought GitHub for a sizable amount of money, we did not know what they were trying to do with that. Well, they have now come up with a product based on the GP3 learning algorithm, where basically you tell the product that they call it a pair programmer, but it's really you tell it what you want the function to be, and the algorithm, by looking up at all these millions of contributions from open source, is able to generate the code that you need. And it's actually helpful, but it doesn't take into account the legal regime of open source, where all this stuff was made available based on the principles of open source. Smartly, Microsoft did not include their own code in the source code, and any code you generate is now back to being owned by the algorithm or being used by the algorithm, and thus back in the possession of Microsoft. So there are major changes that we need to be aware of. And this smiling gentleman, beyond going to space and all that good stuff, has been buying companies left, right, and center. So medical companies, a video doorbell company, so you can see who's coming and who's going and what time, at your door. The Roomba, this is just brand new. They trying to bought the Roomba manufacturer, because the Roomba knows exactly how your home setup is, and knows if you have toys on the floor, or knows if you have enough furniture in your room and stuff like that. And then in addition to buying, Whole Foods as a delivery service and so on. So what sector is this firm in? All of them. They are in the sector of you, basically. They're all after all these aspects of your life, our lives. And this is why traditional regulations are going to be impossible to implement. This Because they're built on industries, and this on competition and monopoly, and and maybe the sectors, these GAFAM type firms, are too big to be regulated by now. They're the largest firms in the land, and they're already spending more money on regulation, on fighting regulation, than any other industry before. So it's going to be a tough few years. Okay, now you wanted me probably to talk about this. And I have selected 4 things that I think are highly promising. And I'm sorry, I needed to get there because it's kind of, that's how I got here. So there are 4 perspectives that I think are promising. The first one is a perspective of embodiment. I remember the AC and early on, and this is basically, we live in our bodies. Our bodies are in situations in the world, right? But most of our research doesn't pay attention to bodies. It's about cognition, it's about an instrumental view of technology, it's psychological, it's economic viewpoints, and so on. So if you foreground the body, a lot of good things can come out of it, because we engage with the world through our bodies. So just from the images, haptic feedbacks is a big thing. Touch and haptic is important. The middle picture on top is a medical robot of the kind I've studied with Anastasia and Marlene. The drone you can see, the robot on Mars has to be guided. Telemedicine is all about embodiment. It's not the same thing as a doctor seeing you and in person, touching you and all manipulating organs and things like that. And finally, the last picture is about this, the meta universe of the future, where it's all gonna depend on whether we can inhabit that space and feel natural in it, and haptic feedbacks is the essential aspect of it. So it's an interesting frame to study such phenomena. A second frame is regime of knowing, or regime of organizing, whichever way you want to cut it. So basically, as these changes we have described are so big and engage so much more than the use relationship, It's intertwines with the social, the political, the institutional, the legal. And so we need words a vocabulary to describe this. And one vocabulary is this regime's vocabulary that I think, I've worked on with Stella and Marlene and people from Amsterdam, the VU, and Cambridge, right? And so this perspective allows you to go it's different than institutional theory, which is a bit high level. This is much more related to work at the level of practice of kind of authority or legal arrangements, and it's something that I would say would be promising. The example I have here is like you look at big agriculture, the high use of fertilizer and pesticides and modified seeds and all these legal arrangements about not being able to replant your seeds and so on, and compare that to the farm to table model of agriculture. So this is kind of where this could be useful. A third lens is performativity. I have a picture of Simone de Beauvoir because I think she's the first performative scholar, even before Judith Butler. In 1949, she said, one is not born a woman, one becomes a woman. And through repetition and doing, and that is, for us, a lot of things. So I'm not talking about just doing things with words. I'm talking about organizational context. Words and things are constituted or become something else over time. It's a way to look at change, at transformation. So it's always tentative, it's always in flux. And it's useful to study technology, I'm gonna say. So there are many books on this stuff, but including by Daniel Bunza, who won the book award here 2 years ago, and McKinsey and Calon and so on. But for us is how do we account for an artifact or a technology or even a piece of software? And we have our own scholars that you know, and so it's a projection of the future. How do we go from the current state of affairs to a different state of affairs? And that's a way to trace it. So it's an emphasis on the journey, what gets assembled, and how are things deployed and ordered over time. And it's a relational ontology, and it's processual, and it's inherently sociomaterial. Okay, so that's something promising to understand transformation involving technology. My last perspective, this relational perspective on technology that is kind of a unifier of all these things. One is that we need to give up the accounts of technology as bounded entities or objects in the world and focus more on what relations they're involved in. It's a view that does not separate between technology and organizing. It's a view that recognizes that all these actors are entwined in a constellation of relations, and the important thing is not necessarily the entities that are at play, but more the relation. The relation is everything. The relation is the starting point, because what is important is not that company A is transacting with company B or with a customer C. It's more like what is being carried by those relations. What is the content of it? How is it changing over time? What is being able to do or not do or afford and so on? So a relational perspective on technology is something we did a special issue in organizational science this year, and that was our way to summarize where kind of all these submitted paper were kind of headed, or hopefully headed, or maybe headed. And so in conclusion, and I want to say that it's a very bright moment for CTO scholars. So it's you're all interested in this entanglement between technology and organizing. There's the rest of this conference is struggling very hard with these issues and they lack a vocabulary, a conceptual vocabulary to deal with it. So if you give up on the technology as a separate thing, you give up And for some of our colleagues in this conference, if they give up on the loveliness of their abstraction, their abstract theories, such as in strategy, a lot can be done by looking at these socio-material relations, processes, performative entanglements, and so on. Thank you.